Okay, this video focuses on going over some tips that you can use to complete your house puzzle. Here I have set up a few objects that are rotated, that are moved, off-centered, and so forth. And I'm just going to show you some of these tools that you can use to complete your house puzzle. Alright, first we're going to talk about snapping. You can select the object and have them snap to the grid, which is right there. The snapping is based on the pivot point of the object. So in this case, this is a flat plane. So because it's flat, when I snap it to the grid, that pivot point, which is the center of rotation, will snap to the middle of the grid. Okay. Another thing is, before you snap, you notice that some of the objects are rotated kind of weird. And if you look at the channel box, you'll notice that the rotations are set to various values. So if you want it straight, the easiest thing to do is to hold the left click, highlight all of these, and tap a 0. And that will reset the rotation back to 0 for this object. And then to snap it, up here are your snapping tools. This one snaps to grid, snaps to curve, snap to point. We're not going to be using the snap to curve at this point, but you will be using snap to points and snap to grid. Now you can always turn this on, and then middle mouse click and drag this, and it'll snap to the grid. I'm going to do that. However, I don't like to use that because sometimes if you forget to turn it off, you'd be snapping everything, and you wouldn't. If you've forgotten that you had it on, it'll be kind of frustrating. So instead of that, I like to use a hotkey, which is the letter X. Holding down letter X on the keyboard, middle mouse click on the center portion of the object, and you can now snap it to grid. Once you snap the ground to the grid, and if the grid is in your way or kind of distracting, you can always go up to this key, this button right here. It says grid. You can turn it off. So now all the views, you can do the same thing. Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to do is to place this object on the grid. Now, because this object's pivot is in the center of the object instead of, and this is a three-dimensional object, when I snap it to the grid, you notice that it snaps it midway in the middle, okay, because it snaps to the pivot point. So holding down X again, middle mouse click and drag, and snapping it to the grid. Oh, sorry, the grid is gone, so I have to turn it back on. That'll work. You notice that now it snaps in the middle, okay, and then you have to raise it up. All right, with the your mouse. I'm going to turn the grid off again. And to line things up, you can always go to the side views, roll your middle mouse button to zoom in, and line that up on the surface, okay, the ground if you want to call it. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to connect this object to this object. Actually, I want to do something else, so let me go ahead and duplicate this box. Okay, now let's say this box is all the way up over here. Alright, and I want to make this box snap to that box. There's several ways to do it, so I'm going to show you two ways because I'm going to show you first of all how to use snapping to point to line this box with that box. Alright, so to move first you need to move the pivot point to one of the corners, and in this case I'm going to pick the bottom corner right over here. To move the pivot point, you're going to hold down the D key, or you can hit the insert key on the keyboard. I like to use hotkeys because once I release it, the key is no longer viable. If you hit the insert key, you have to re-hit the insert key to get out of the mode. So I prefer to use the hotkey, which is D. Now if I just hold down D and move, I can move the pivot point, but what I want to do is to snap that pivot to the corner of the box. And with that, I'm going to also hold down the V key. So now I'm holding both the D and the V key, middle mouse click, and drag this point pivot to the corner. Now with that done, I can now hold down the V key and grab the box, and you can see that now it'll easily snap sometimes you have to kind of move the to get it to easier. So I'm going to go ahead and snap it. So as you can see, it snaps to the corner. I can again hold down the V key and move the box. In this case, I'm going to move it up, and there you go. Okay, on this side, I will hold down the V key and move it over here, and now I can line it up right there. Okay, so that's by moving the pivot point and holding down the D and the V key to move the pivot and to move the pivot to the corner or a vertex or a point on the object. All right. With that done, you can easily recenter the pivot by going to the Modify tool and going to Center Pivot. All right. Now, I'm going to show you a different way as to how I can make this object snap to the top of that box in case like a roof of a building. So this time we're going to use something called, and I'm going to make sure the rotations are set correctly. Okay, there's no rotation. I'm going to do something called the Snap Together tool. And what that does is it allows you to snap the face of an object to another face. So I'm just going to move it closer so we don't have to be all over the place. And I'm going to go to Modify, Snap Together tool. All right. Now under here, it gives you a tooltip, which is to click on the surface to be moved. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that surface right there. All right. And now it says click on this destination surface. So I want this to snap to right here. I'm going to click on that and hit enter. And now you can see that that is perfectly snapped to that box. Now of course it's rotated weird, so you're going to have to work on the rotation to get it to rotate correctly. In this case, it's probably easier to do it from the top view. So I'm going to hit E to rotate. I'm going to grab the box, and I believe it's a 45-degree rotation. And I'm just going to move the box to the center. Okay, like so. Alright, so here's just a different way of snapping objects together. So you can use whichever way will work for you. Alright, and now there's one more way. Let's say this is a window, and I want to snap this window to the side of the house. Alright, another way to do it is by making a surface light. So I'm going to make sure this window has no rotation at all by zeroing out all the rotation X, Y, and Z. And select this object and go up to the status bar and select this option, the magnet. So now that object becomes a live surface. Now all I have to do is click on this object, middle mouse click on the center in that circle, and move it over to the surface. So it'll now very easily, without you doing a lot of navigating around your viewport, you can easily place that object where you want it, and then click on this again to deactivate, and now you can move that up to line the window up if you like. Okay, or you can use the snap to surface tool that I just demonstrated by snapping this to this. Okay, let's see what else. All right, finally what I want you to do is to show you how to use some align tools to make this into a fence with some fence posts, which is what is in your puzzle. So the first thing I want to do is to move this over to where the house is. So let's say this is a fence. I'm going to rotate it this direction. It's a Y direction, minus 90 for a 90-degree rotation. I'm going to move that over here. F to zoom in. Let's say this is a fence post in front of the house. Okay. I know things are not quite proportional. I just set up these objects randomly to show you how to use some of these tools. So let's say this is sitting in front of the house. All right. And I have a bunch of fence posts that are going to be right underneath it. So the first thing I'm going to do is take all these fence posts and zero out the rotation. Okay, now here's one more tool I want to show you. I want all these to line up. Since the fence is facing that way, I want them to line up in a straight line facing that direction.